Greetings, Surge community. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Surge Straight Talk. My name is Amanda Chocko, and I am the Director of Surge. Today, I will be speaking with Laurel Romanella. Laurel is an attorney, an entrepreneur, a speaker, an EOS implementer, and lucky for us, a Surge mentor. Laurel helps entrepreneurs and leaders grow great companies and get what they want from their businesses. Today, Laurel will be sharing what it means when an entrepreneur is hitting the ceiling and how mastering the 5 leadership abilities can help to get them unstuck. Please welcome Laurel Romanella. Hi, Laurel. Thanks for joining us today. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, Amanda. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, so happy that you're here. So I know that you have got a lot of great information to share with us today, but before we get into that, can you share a bit about yourself and your entrepreneurial journey and how you got where you are today?
I'd be happy to. So I currently own 2 businesses. One is called Laurel & Co. The other is a business in healthcare that I own with my family.
Wow.
But I wasn't always an entrepreneur. I actually started my career in healthcare and spent about 17 years working in West Michigan in executive roles, which really gave me the wonderful opportunity of sitting at the table and learning how to run the business of healthcare. But it also gave me the opportunity to really build a vision for companies, big systems, drive that through the organization and do cool things like change the culture in ways that really benefited both patients and their families. So after that, I had the opportunity to go to law school. So I am a practicing attorney now. And after law school, I decided to take on a new challenge and not go back to healthcare, but really move more into direct business and working with entrepreneurs. So since 2014, I've had the pleasure of working with over 350 entrepreneurs and businesses, providing both legal and business services to them, serving as their advisor and their confidant. So that's been a great journey for me. In 2019, though, I got stuck and my business was growing externally, but I was having some internal chaos. And as a result of that internal chaos, my company was not then growing externally. So around that time, I had a friend say to me, you know, you really should read this book called Traction. And I have to admit that, Amanda, I didn't read it right away, even though I should have, because I had a little bit of an ego as an entrepreneur. Like, oh, I can figure this all out on my own. I don't need to read a book. What could that teach me? But I ended up reading it when I got in enough pain. And there was a point where I felt like, you know, I'm more afraid of the status quo and stagnating than I am of change. So after reading the book, I got really invested in EOS. That's what the book Traction is about. It teaches you as an entrepreneur how to manage and run your business. And I implemented that in my own businesses, and it was really transformational for us. So I got really curious about EOS, and long story short here, dove in with both feet and am now a professional EOS implementer. And so I help companies, entrepreneurs implement EOS in their own companies. So that's kind of my journey, a little bit about me.
Yeah, that's awesome. So much experience. That's great. So many entrepreneurs that you've worked with. So,
Yeah.
And, you know, love EOS. Lakeshore Advantage uses that system. And I would say it's probably one of the most well-run organizations that I've ever worked for. So, you know, for those that aren't familiar with EOS, can you just go into a bit more detail of what that entails?
Sure. First, EOS stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System, and it's for companies that have, you know, roughly 10 to 250 employees, but you can have less and you can certainly have more. But really, it is what it sounds like. It's a system, very simple, very practical, no theory, for how to get everything you want out of your business and really achieve all that you're striving for as an entrepreneur. It really harmonizes and orchestrates all these moving parts of your company in very clear ways. And it also, I would say, harnesses your human energy so that you're always working in the right ways, moving in the right direction, you have better communication, you're more efficient. You know, there are just so many benefits to this that I've seen. But what I discovered that I didn't know when I started running on EOS was that there are over 9,000 companies now, Amanda, like you guys and like my companies that are using EOS around the world. And that's remarkable to me because that means that over the 15 or 20 years that this has existed, it really works. And I can speak to that, and you just did too. So hopefully that gives a little bit of background about what EOS is.
Yeah, and I can attest to all the things that you say it does, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So in your experience working with all the entrepreneurs that you have, where are the most common areas that they get stuck? And, you know, in other words, hitting the ceiling. I've heard you mention that phrase before.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I see it, Amanda, a lot in not growing. So they're not seeing, for example, the sales numbers that they want to see, or they're not hitting their targets. Maybe those are financial targets. So they're just not growing the way that they want to. And often we see that then when they stagnate, or unfortunately they fail, and we all know the statistics on the failure of businesses. I also see it though in employee turnover. So employees don't want to come to work, or they can't retain or attract really good talent because the inside of the business just isn't really cohesive. It's a little chaotic. But where I really see it the most, and what I experienced too, Amanda, was in that work-life balance. So as entrepreneurs, we feel like, oh, we have to do all of this stuff all ourselves all the time, and we're just busy, 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 which is great. But you want to be busy doing the right things in the right way. And you also want to have this balance. You know, you can't just work 90 hours a week in your business for years and years. You're going to burn yourself out and your business will fail, excuse me. So I think those are some of the ways that I see entrepreneurs getting stuck.
Yeah, sure. So I've also heard you mention the 5 leadership abilities in our conversations. Are these, or is there any way that this is tied into how entrepreneurs can become unstuck?
Yes, yeah. So if you don't mind, I'll back up just a minute, Amanda. So I learned this with EOS, that companies don't just grow in this, you know, perfect straight line. They actually go through these periods of evolution and then revolution. And we just went through a period together of revolution called COVID. And when that happens, you really hit the ceiling. And the good news about that, in a way, I mean, you shouldn't feel abnormal, because everybody does. Everybody hits the ceiling. You're going to hit it more than once. If you haven't hit it, you will. And so it's just this normal part of business growth. Mm-hmm. But if you think about it, you can't just continue to hit that ceiling. You really need to break through, like I mentioned. And so 5 leadership abilities are really those abilities as a leader that you need to have and grow and become masterful at, so that you can break through that ceiling and keep growing. And then you go through another period of evolution and revolution, and then you hit the ceiling again, and then you need to break through it again. So the cycle continues. There are 5 leadership abilities, and I'm myself in the process of still mastering those. They are simplify, delegate, predict, systemize, and structure.
Yeah, so can you tell us more about any of those, all of those? Which ones do you think for entrepreneurs, you know, would be the best ones to start with?
Yeah, so let me just give you a tiny little bit about each one. So simplify is exactly what it sounds like. We all tend to overcomplicate things, and that creates chaos in our organizations. So less is more. Mm-hmm. Delegate is about delegating those things to other people so that your company can grow, because if you hold it all yourself, you'll never move forward. Predict is great. I love this predict piece, and it's actually a muscle in a way that we have to learn how to use, and we get better at it. So predicting is long-term and short-term. So how are you predicting those top, let's say, 3 to 7 priorities for your company for the next 90 days? And how are you painting a picture very clearly of where your company needs to be in 1 short year or 3 short years? So it's really predicting where you're going to go and then how you're going to get there. Systemize has to do with core processes. So every organization has only about, Amanda, 6 to 10 core processes, especially smaller companies, often entrepreneurial companies. And we're talking about core here, you know, like the HR process or the sales process. And so Systemize is about naming those things. What are all those core processes? Making sure that we have common language around those so that we're all talking about the same thing. And simplifying them and then documenting them, but only the major steps. We are not trying to create an SOP here that's thousands of pages long. Once you do all of that, then the key is to make sure it's followed by all. So is everybody doing that process and those major steps the right way? And then at the end of that, Amanda, you make sure that the most important stuff in your business is getting done the right and best way every time. So I believe, Amanda, the last leadership ability I mentioned was structure. And that's really looking at your organization and predicting the structure that you need, not the titles and all the job details, but just the functions that your business needs to have to really move forward over the next 6 to 12 months. Most companies only have 3 major functions: sales and marketing, operations, and finance. So again, don't make it overcomplicated, but that's what structure is about. So that's a little bit of an overview, but I wonder, Amanda, if I could give a little more detail on 2 of those that I think in particular are really helpful for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, awesome. So the first one I want to mention is simplify. So in our organizations, we just tend to create all of this complexity. Simplify is about rooting out complexity wherever you find it, always looking for that, rooting it out, and then eliminating it. I mentioned I think less is more, and as entrepreneurs, we tend to think, no, that's not right. More is more, but truly less is more. We want to keep it simple. The other thing to think about is that every time you add a person in your organization, you add lines of communication and therefore add complexity. So just a simple example, Amanda, if you and I were in a business together, there are 2 of us and 2 lines of communication, me to you and you to me. When we add another person, we add or go from 6, go to 6 lines of communication from 2. So we've now just increased complexity by 200% just by increasing the number of people 50%. So if you think about that, and as companies grow and scale, they are going crazy with complexity simply by adding people in all those lines of communication. So it's important as leaders and entrepreneurs, it's kind of our job to be aware of the complexity we are creating in our organizations, around our people, but also we see complexity created with customers. So the process is too complicated, or it doesn't make sense because it's not simple enough for our clients. So being aware of all of that complexity really on all sides of what you're doing. And then the goal is to reduce that, like I said, find it, be ruthless about asking yourself, is this the most simple way that I could do this? And then do it. Keep it simple. Keep your your sales simple, your marketing simple, your communication simple. So that's simplify.
Um,
I think the other one, Amanda, I think the other one was delegate. You want me to jump into that one a minute?
um, yeah, I'll comment when you're done with both. Sure.
Okay, okay, all right. Delegate is about really getting rid of the stuff that's on your plate. And as entrepreneurs, we are actually great at holding on to things. So I often liken an entrepreneur to an octopus. We want to have all these tentacles and we have to be involved in everything in the business. And the business has to just kind of evolve or rotate around us. And actually, that creates, again, complexity, but also chaos and frustration, not only for our team, but ultimately for us as well. So we tend to also hold on to key functions. So for example, we think we need to be the accountant and the sales and marketing guru and the product manufacturer, and we need to do all these things and wear all of these hats. And actually what you need to do in order to keep growing is you have to delegate. And delegating is scary. I get that. I know that. I felt that pain myself in my own company. But if you let go of that, you're going to free yourself up to be everything you need to be for your company. Sometimes as an entrepreneur, you just have to admit that you can't be like, the chief bottle washer and the floor scrubber and the accountant and the sales rep and all of these things, because then you're really not helping your company grow and do what it needs to do. So the way to delegate is to delegate into that right structure that I mentioned earlier. And I think that's a great opportunity for entrepreneurs to think about, what do I need? And as an example for myself, I am the first to admit that I am no good at sales and marketing from the perspective of website building or ads, or, I love EOS. It's been transformational for me. So I can talk about that all day long, but I don't know all the ins and outs of social media and other things like that. So yeah. I delegate that. I don't have an employee for that, but I contract that out and work with somebody similar to an accountant. So I know entrepreneurs might be thinking, well, that's all well and good, but I can't afford employees. I would say to you, you don't need an employee. You need somebody who's really great at that, and you can contract with that person within your budget or your financial constraints. Yeah. So what that does is when you free yourself and you let go, you're delegating to people who do it really well, but then you're elevating yourself. And we need you working in this space called your unique ability. And your unique ability, Amanda, is really that space where you're doing what you love to do and what you're best at. And so we want to elevate you into your unique ability, because, man, your company will just take off when you do that. Truth be told, you probably didn't want to do all that sales and marketing stuff. You probably didn't want to keep the books. Not only didn't you like it, but you aren't very good at it. So let it go. Get somebody who is, elevate into your unique ability. And it's a pretty awesome thing to see. I love it when the clients that I work with elevate. It's transformational for them and their companies and their teams.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just from my own experiences for, a couple of businesses that I started, it's, you're so excited, in the beginning, because you're really driven by, the good that your company's going to do, the problems that you're going to solve. And all of a sudden, all these other things come on that are not really your, area of, expertise or talent. That could really drag you down, to the point where you're not as excited about your company anymore. Yeah. So, I definitely see that is something, but being able to, as you said, entrepreneurs, we tend to like to control everything and need to have those tentacles out, or now every entrepreneur I meet, I'm going to imagine their head on an octopus. I'll
Yeah.
try not to.
Yeah.
But just, I could see where it's challenging to do that, because you're like, especially like in the beginning, you're in that launch stage, you're really trying to, get your, company off the ground, and you're doing everything and you're hustling. And then all of a sudden, you're starting to grow a little bit, you're getting customers, and you have to start, bringing other people on or outsourcing more. And to really have, those systems in place, and be able to simplify and delegate. I imagine that an entrepreneur would want to start doing that as early as possible, right? Before all of a sudden
Yes.
you have like 5 employees and everyone's running around with like chickens without heads. Um,
Yes.
and,
Yeah.
and I agree, even from an employee perspective, the difference working in an organization that has those systems in place, and everyone knows the part that they play in the big picture, and is very transparent, and communication is flowing, is great. Gets you excited about going to work every day and helping this company thrive. So culturally, super important. But how do you bridge that as an entrepreneur? How do you start with, it's just me, myself, and I, trying to get the ship in the water, and then all of a sudden, now um, I have to start forming a company and growing. So like,
Yeah.
what would be the on-ramp for an EOS in that case?
Yeah. Great question, Amanda. And if you don't mind, I want to just go back and make a quick comment on what you just said. I think, and you can answer this for me, I sense with my clients that when they're running on EOS, their employees feel more valued, like their talents and their unique abilities and their skills and their experiences are all being used in really great ways, ways that, feed you as a team member. Have you felt that when we kind of talk about that delegate and elevate, to know that your company wants you working in this place where you love what you're doing and what what you're good at?
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, there's no better feeling that knowing that you're helping, you're contributing with the talents that you have that get you excited, that that are really your mode of operation, and not be dragged down by things that are outside of that,
Yeah.
and not knowing where you fit in the whole thing. And just, I think culturally it's a very positive and empowering environment to be in.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that, Amanda. And I'll go back to answer your question. I would say, as entrepreneurs who are starting out, maybe it's your first couple of months, maybe it's your first year, year and a half, a couple thoughts. One is, start using that predict muscle. Even if there's one of you in the company, you can definitely ask yourself, what are the 3 to 7 only? We want to keep it simple and achievable, but what are the 3 to 7 top life or death priorities for my company? And you have to be really honest with yourself about that. And that's not working in the business, that's working on the business. And on the business is about moving it forward so that you can achieve your vision and keep growing and scaling. So I would start with that predict muscle, Amanda, and I would just stick to 90 days. We tend to want to think way far out, and new companies create this great 3-year plan. The world changes too fast.
Kidding.
I don't know that any of us know where we're going to be in 3 years, even a year. And it's not that you don't look at that and think about that, but you want to create almost this 90-day world for your company. So predict that short term for 90 days, top 3 to 7 life or death priorities that have to get accomplished. Dedicate 20% of your time every week to those rocks. And if you do that, those are your big priorities on the business. Then all the other stuff, like, that Stephen Covey example, I think, in the cylinder, then all the pebbles, like the daily tasks and the interruptions, like the sand and the water and all this other stuff just fits around that rock very nicely. And you feel like you're both working then in the business and on the business. And then as you go along, keep doing what we talked about. What are your core processes? Even if there's one of you and you're in your first couple months, I guarantee you have some core processes. Think about what those are, use common language, even with yourself. Start to document them, because you're going to find where there's inefficiency or where you can make improvements. Simplify everything. As I said before, be ruthless about that. And again, you can do that right off the bat. And then when you do start to grow, that's when you exercise that delegate. But even still, Amanda, in my own company, I really had to get honest with myself. And being an entrepreneur can be a pretty harsh mirror, but you need to be able to just, say what you need to say to yourself. Sometimes it's that self-talk, and think about, is this the highest and best use of my time? Am I fooling myself that this is a company, or am I focused more on the number of people I network with that don't ever get me sales? Am I fiddling around with my CRM? Am I messing with my website? Am I doing all these things that are distractions, or playing in areas where I'm not good at those things? And so you got to get real and really focus on the things that are going to truly move your company forward, so that you're not playing at being an entrepreneur. You're actually an entrepreneur.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah.
Great. So, thank you so much for all of that. So before we go, is there anything else, any last parting words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
Oh boy, how much time do we have? and those are more probably things to share based on my failures than anything else. But I guess I'd have a couple thoughts, Amanda. One is, we seem to be afraid of failure for some reason. And when I work with clients with EOS, I invite them to fail, to take on new tools, really use those things in their business, go out and fail, because that's how as adults we learn, and then come back and tweak it and do it, a little bit better every time. So don't be afraid of failure. And at the same time, I think it's critical for entrepreneurs to be humbly confident. So you can be very confident in the services that you provide and what you do, and in yourself. That's really important. But the humble part of that is saying, you know what? I may be really great at food or coffee or IT or whatever it is, the what that you do in your business. But it's being humble and saying, I might not have all the answers about how to truly manage or operate my business to get everything out of it. So the what that you do is different from managing and operating your business, two different things. So how are you surrounding yourself with people or systems like EOS that are going to help you manage and operate your business better, so that then the what that you do can just kind of take off and scale from there. So I think that's what comes to mind, Amanda.
Excellent advice. So where can people learn more about you, get in touch with you, Laurel?
I would say on LinkedIn, just, search on my name. That's a great way to connect with me and learn a little bit more about, who I am and what I'm doing. Or feel free to email me directly. My email is really simple. It's Laurel@laurelandco.com. So yeah, feel free to reach out. You know me, Amanda. I am about help first. I have a passion and a heart for entrepreneurs and really helping them get everything they want out of their business and live a better life. And it's possible. I'm living proof of that, as is your company too, Amanda. So If anybody has questions or wants to reach out, have coffee, I thrive on that. So happy to help.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Laurel.
Okay, thanks, Amanda.
Take care.